What's good, everybody? Hope everybody's post Turkey Day balloon belly or however which way you want to put it's been going all right. Balloon belly or however which way you want to put it's Hold been on just a moment. All right, cool. Got rid of the echo. Hey, man, welcome everybody into the first episode of the StarDock StreamCast. For those of you that have been following along with the stream and all the programming and the developments that we've had going on here, you know that we've been wanting to get things kick-started on this for some time now. I mean, it has been a good long while since we've really hosted the streamcast. Back when, of course, when it was me and I was co-hosts at that time were Dab Jr. and of course Echo. And we did quite a few things back in the day, and that was during the height of the Injustice 2 period. So it's been a few years, and it's been a long time coming for us to bring this little ditty right on back here into the platform. And so I'm very happy to see how this starts off, where this goes, and if any it goes anything like what's come out of the streamcast or the showcases that have been run here on twitch.tv/StarCharger28. It's that we can definitely grow this from the bottom and work it right on its way to something special. For those of you guys that have joined in early, first off, thank you so much for joining in. Second of all, I definitely hope to see you guys here whenever I host these. I'm gonna try to host these on almost every Thursday, if not almost every other Thursday. Definitely something worth following along on Twitter or Discord. And then, of course, I will be putting all of these out on YouTube when everything is all said and done. So, to every single one of you that have come along and checked things out with us here, thank you so much. And there's a bit to talk about when you get right down in the thick of it. I mean, you uh, take a look at everything that's gone down here with Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate and all the changes that have happened on its scale from when it released a couple of weeks ago up to this point. I mean, the reactions based on the things that have changed in the game have definitely been mixed. I mean, you look at the way the game has essentially had its meta tooled with, and then the allowance of the custom variations to now become a thing in the game. That was something that I've been championing for personally for the last several years, and interestingly enough, it's now become a focal point with this particular release of the game. So it's very good to see that we are finally given the opportunity to actually allow this to become the standard on how the game is played, not just casually speaking, but just how the game's played overall. I mean, when you look at how things have evolved between the end of the previous era to this new era, we're now looking at folks actually now having to prepare for all facets of what a character can do before going ahead and judging on whether that character's capabilities in terms of a placement on any kind of a list well, to be frank with you, tier listings pretty much went out the window. The basic changes to the overall meta and the basic changes to the balance themselves have really taken the previous understanding of the game in terms of a balance perspective and has turned it on its head. I don't want to say completely turned it on its head, but definitely made it to where folks definitely have to restudy up on the game in order to really get a good foothold on just where things are right now. And as such, you think about how things have come along between release and to this point. Feelings are mixed for a lot of different reasons. We're gonna go into that, once we go ahead and get these patch notes up. First up, I definitely like to thank every single one of the followers, subscribers here on the channel who've definitely stuck with everything from the beginning. Thank you so much, and definitely want to see if uh, we can go ahead and turn this into something where we can actually go ahead and continue on where we left off on the last iteration of the the StreamCast by getting some good old interviews on here so that we can get everybody's opinion on how things actually shake down in the MK community. All right, as such, let's go ahead and get into those general adjustments that have been made. I mean, from a gameplay perspective, I mean, they adjusted certain things, from a general gameplay standpoint, such that moveless corrections have been made, although the corrections aren't perfect. I mean, they've improved AI logic, added brutalities into the game, and added some quirks to some of those brutalities. Who was it that had the big boot? Brutality. I think it was Shao Kahn where he has the big boot with forward four, where such that if you go ahead and get caught having that in the game, after it kills you, you got certain body parts like the arms and the head spinning, and then they eventually drop after spinning a while. That's a nod to MK4 when Reiko would do that, and the game would glitch out to the point to where those same body parts would be spinning there for extended periods of time, if not indefinitely. So, cool little nods to that. Kind of like the way that they continually reference the past history of Mortal Kombat in the game. Of course, we all know about the get up recovery now being 4 times faster, and the delayed get up animation now being standardized across the entire cast. Uh, Unfortunately, Fatal Blows didn't quite get the hammer that all of us were really wanting it to get, especially from a competitive standpoint, because it really sucks knowing that you've made a good read in the sense that you've baited out a Fatal Blow reaction from your opponent. If they just do it in the neutral, or just do it to react to something, but they miss the mark or don't get the hit, whatever the case may be, and you block it and they bounce all the way back across the screen, or to a point where you can't do anything about it. And of course, even if they were close up to you, I mean, they're in some cases they can be full combo punishable. In most cases, they aren't. And in many cases, of course, in all cases though, block, whiff, whatever the case may be, outside of obviously them connecting on it with you, is they get it to come right on back. I mean, Fatal Blow's coming right back in just a few seconds time, if of course they're still active in that same round. I've never been a fan of that. I don't think anybody within the community's ever been a fan of that. I mean, it's a universal mechanic that essentially rewards your opponent for getting slapped up, gives them a 30% armored up, have multi-hitting armor, uh, reversal move that has the capability of completely changing the dynamic of a game. That, to be honest with you, Mortal Kombat's never really delved into. Ever since, of course, the resurgence of Mortal Kombat under the NRS banner, they've never delved into that up until obviously MK11. And suffice to say, it's not a very popular thing. And suffice to say, it would have been very nice for them to have added more to that than the 6 frame uh, flawless block window that you now have tagged onto that particular maneuver. So it would have been much better to see if they could have given that a little bit more of a punishment in terms of you blocking it, having it with whatever. It would have been much better to see it, just go either just be used, and whether it hits, block, whiff, you use it, it's no longer in effect anymore. All right, it would have been nice to see that, but that's not the case. And then of course breakaways. Well, breakaway. I think nobody likes breakaway. The armor breakers, the way that they've dealt with armor breakers, the way that some characters have just about mountain loads of, it seems like every move that they've got in their arsenal is an armor breaker of some kind, like Cabal, Shao Kahn. I mean, but then again, that doesn't exactly help Shao Kahn standing, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But by the same stretch, Breakaway still continues to be one of those kinds of things where, it's like pulling teeth to get it to happen whenever you absolutely want it to happen. Even now that we've gotten to a point to where network approaching 2 years in this game, it's still a problem. It was a problem back in the release. It's a problem now. and no, nothing really has been done in this meta to really change that. Um, I mean, they've added, of course, compatibility in the game with 4K cinematics and also the resolutions necessary to be supported on next gen. Now, I do not have a next gen console yet. I don't have an Xbox Series X or a PS5, but from what I can see from some of the other players in the community here, they seem to really be enjoying the way that the game loads up faster, has improved, or even better looking visuals than it already does, because if there's any one element about this game that I actually have to give props on, aside from certain character designs, it's definitely the visuals. I gotta give that some props. And with that, of course, they've added some extra changes there. Now, Combat League unfortunately didn't see the kinds of changes that many of us would have really wanted to see, especially with the thought that uh, an improvement to the overall experience of getting your matches being paired up with guys that are actually within your rank, either within your region, within your same connection type or designation. I mean, it would have been really nice to see them take a lot of the feedback that we've been giving them over the past 18, 20 months on allowing us to have a search criteria based on connection stability or connection designation, either i.e. Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and they've been giving us the opportunity to see just how that would actually go about making the game so much smoother in terms of getting connected to people that are we can connect with, that we want to connect with, and of course that are gonna make those matches in Combat League worth our while in terms of matching us up with either people of same rank, same skill level, or for that matter, somewhat exceeding rank, like a rank above, or whatever the case may be. In terms of getting something out of it, it would have been really nice to see what they could have given us in terms of that kind of criteria, but unfortunately, it was not to be. Um, that said, I mean, they only added minor online stability improvements. They fixed several desync issues. Basically, they didn't do enough right here outside of adding custom variations to competitive mode that really makes Combat League a much more pleasurable experience. And if you've seen me play the game, grinding it over the course of the week on stream, you definitely notice that it's definitely not the kind of enjoyable experience that I would personally would have liked it to be. Some folks are gonna have different opinions. Some aren't, but by the same stretch, it's definitely something worth noting that not enough was done there to really, tilt the scales in the favor of Combat League to make it accessible mode. As I definitely like to welcome Liz Vasto Lorde in the chat. Thank you so much for joining. And to answer some questions, I've seen some questions. No, unfortunately, there will not be a showcase tonight. The showcase, if that wasn't made clear on social media, I apologize, but the showcase will resume next week. It will resume both MK11 and the MKX showcases Friday night and Saturday night, respectively, will happen next week. So all signups that happen for the showcase are going to be taken into consideration for next week's shows. I've had to use this weekend and this week the Thanksgiving week, which, by the way, happy belated Thanksgiving to everybody over here that's celebrating it. And also, I hope Black Friday definitely yielded some pretty good fruits for everybody's labors yesterday, and I hope everybody's having a very relaxing weekend. I had a very good weekend so far, worked out, getting in some good shape, and definitely wanted to, express all that here now that I've got the opportunity. So, yes, no showcase for tonight. There will be a showcase on both games next week. So, mark that down on the calendar. It'll be business back to normal next week. So, with that said, um, just going right back into the balance changes or the notes and what have you. Um, you got stuff in the crypt, you got towers of time changes. I mean, yeah, none of that really excites me considering the fact that we still don't have an option to this day that allows us to just buy all the gear. I mean, at this point, we've dropped $60 for the game itself, depending on which version you got. If you got the collector's edition back in April of last year, then you dropped $100 on the game. All right, and then you've gone and dropped about $15 to $20 on the new combat packs that have occurred. You've got the couple of sets of characters that have been released, certain character skins and whatnot that have been released that you had to pay for. So essentially, you take those bits of 5, you had bits of 10, you had to buy. Sometimes you probably bought crystals. Time crystals. If you bought that, add up those microtransactions to the pool, and then next thing you know, you realize, darn, I've spent $250 on this game. And you have to sit there and think to yourself, well, damn, if I've already spent that amount of money on this game, why do I still not have all of the kinds of content that this game actually has at its disposal for me to be able to use? All that money spent, and I still don't have access to a lot of the things for Kitana that I'd really like. All that money spent on the game, I still don't have access to what all the other characters have that I'd like to equip on them to make them look faster or it suits my taste or whatever the case may be. Stuff like that kind of gets under my skin because of the fact that I know that, in spite of the fact that it's not exactly my favorite game up to this point as far as the lineage of Mortal Kombat is concerned, it's still something that, business practice wise, I at least deserve to have the full extent of what the game has to offer. This goes on back into the same things that I would discuss with the custom variations, especially with Injustice 2 from a few years ago. You had access to all those moves, but of course you only had the one standard loadout that you could use competitively speaking, meaning all those extra moves were completely useless. Nobody ever gave them a chance to be used in competitive situations, although Honeybee eventually did in his Swarm series, but that's a whole other story. But in the mainstream, we weren't allowed to use that or allowed to essentially have an option that gave us access to all the goodies that the game had at its disposal for us, in spite of how much of a monetary investment we'd already made into the game. Same thing's happening right now with all the gear that exists right now in MK11. To me, that just gets under my skin because, if you paid all that money for the game, updates like Aftermath, and obviously now with Ultimate, we deserve to have the full extent of what the game's got to offer at this point, or have an option that allows us to do so. That's just my 2 cents. Yeah, to me, that's just, my 2 cents. But anyways, from a balance perspective in the game, of course, continuing on with that line item, they've essentially made all characters crouching normals, like down ones, excuse me, down ones, down threes, down fours. They gave all of that more recovery on block and on whiff, such that you don't just get to just rapid fire. Or, theoretically speaking, you're not supposed to just rapid fire all of that, especially if either one of those two results winds up being the reality of things in a match. Whiff, block, whatever between either of those two. You can't just rapid fire all of that, but by the same stretch of the imagination, especially with online play, well, online play is going to be online play. We won't really see the full extent of how that truly affects the meta of things until offline tournaments resume. But given the direction things are trending right now, I don't know. Lord knows when that's going to happen, and even when it does, Lord knows what the outlook of Mortal Kombat 11 is going to be when that time arrives. But as far as balance on the overall scale is concerned, I mean, ultimately you have certain characters in the top tiers like Jackie, getting nerfed. I mean, Jackie, had a few issues, not issues, but she had a few moves with Bionic Dash that got turned into a full combo Punisher maneuver, depending on how quick your buttons are and depending on where she is when you block the maneuver. Uh, when she does the down shrapnel, whenever she's flying around, canceling any leaps into the shrapnel, you've got extra windows, frames to flawless block that stuff, which is good. I mean, and on top of that, they also nerfed her prototype rockets before that became a move that could be used here in the mainstream with custom variations. Oh, sorry about that, folks. For some reason or another, the headset glitched, but here we go. Just to let you guys know, of course, uh, all those crouching normal changes, that was for the entire cast. I mean, they didn't exactly standardize numbers for everybody, but by the same stretch, you go into the character select screen, you go into training mode, you just, take a look at these notes, take a look at just how everything was changed for all of the characters as far as those figures are concerned, and find out, what counters everybody best to your character's tool set. So I'm gonna go ahead and link that down there for everybody. And let me see. There you go. All right. And along with all of that, um, they've basically, you go throughout all of the changes that they have for all of the characters. You go through you go through uh, what every character was essentially given. You go whether it's buff, nerf, whatever the case may be. Certain elements right now are still very much lacking in terms of the gameplay, and and yeah, we're gonna go ahead and definitely think more about that here later on. But just in general, when you go right down the full extent of the patch notes, I mean, you got characters like Fujin who got some decent stuff. Minus one nerf where his up kick actually wound up getting nerfed. Terminator. Well, Terminator really, he stayed really much of the same. Nightwolf, nothing really worth talking about. Shang Tsung got a lot of different changes to a lot of the things that he has in his arsenal. Corpse Drop got a slight nerf in damage. His spell inscriptions actually got decreases in durations. Um, and a few of his other moves got changed to the point to where he can no longer kill his opponent on Soul Swap, so that's definitely something worth keeping in touch with. Shao Kahn, oh man, as much as I really despise what they did to my character Kitana, and I'm gonna get to her in a minute because there's plenty worth eviscerating there. Shao Kahn, that character just can't seem to get a break whatsoever. This character is flawed. His moveset is just as flawed as Kitana's is, and he's just got to live with that junk. And Sub Zero's still a mixed machine. Sonya is still very solid. Scarlet, I mean, to be honest with you, Scarlet didn't really get a lot of changes. She didn't really get a lot of changes we're talking about. Scorpion is still Scorpion. I mean, they took away Demon Dash. If there's any one element where Scorpion mains are a little bit torqued about, it's the fact that their 7-frame Demon Dash isn't quite the all-conquering hero it once was. So, but even still, it's 12-frame startup. It's still good. It's still really good. Raiden is still really good. I mean, can you believe there was a point in time Raiden was considered lackluster? Me neither. Me neither. Liu Kang is still Liu Kang. He still hits like a train and still hits very fast and effectively. Kung Lao, I mean, he got a couple of buffs here, but now he buzzsaw, quote unquote, loses trades. I mean, however which way you want to figure that, go right ahead. But by the same stretch, I mean, he really didn't get many changes that are worth saying that he got worse. But Codal, Codal. Can we talk about why they allowed Codal to be able to tick throw just about off of anything now? Can we talk about this? Like, what were they thinking? What was the thought process on letting Codal have the opportunity to now tick throw off of moves like standing two, all his long reaching moves? For those of you that don't know, Codal's got some of the longest reach in the entire game. It seems like all of his buttons somehow cover a very vast amount of the screen. And of course, in the process, a lot of his close up moves a lot of his normals up close did allow him to get tick throw opportunities, meaning blocking those normals allowed him the opportunity to cancel that move on block stun into a command grab, and it could still hit you in spite of the fact that you were in block stun. Now there are ways out of certain tick throws such that if you jump, certain throws are can be duckable, but by the same stretch, in Kotal's case, the only way to really and truly escape those moves, those command grabs, especially off of a tick scenario, is by jumping, like neutral jumping, forward jumping, back jumping, whatever. If you read it and that's your response to that situation, then you will escape the throw scenario. But then again, there's of course the fact that he can follow it up with a string, one of his sequences that'll just blow you up if you try to jump, or he could just flat out blow you up with another one of his specials that'll definitely blow you up in the act of trying to jump and get away from him. Either way, they really want Kotal to just give people hands because reasons. Reasons. I mean, Kano, yeah, Kano, he remained relatively stagnant. I mean, he remained relatively stagnant. Cabal, I mean, he same deal. Johnny Cage got a lot of changes. He's now got some changes where pissed off now breaks off armor. Uh, he got opponents are now immune to his or his opponent's hop attacks are now immune to his nut punch. All right, and then you've got just the regular standard changes outside of that, along with a few other miscellaneous changes. So if you want to follow along on that, go right ahead. Garrus, he relatively remained the same, but that at the same time, those crouching normals changes definitely hurt his game because we all know how much a lot of the Garrus community love that six frame down one. I'm not hating because I know damn well if I had a six frame normal like that, I definitely wouldn't lay off it either. Just throwing out some honesty. Aaron Black, to be honest with you, Aaron Black, he had a couple of nerfs, but at the same time, uh, didn't really have anything that was really and truly groundbreaking. He's still a darn good character, as is unfortunately Cetrion, because Cetrion just she just still excels with everything. With the advent of custom variations, you're able to add, all kinds of craziness to that character that you gotta wonder how she doesn't have conflicts with some of those moves. But that's the game, I guess. That's really the game, man. Oh, but Kitana, on the other hand, they nerfed the hell out of my girl. For reasons, I mean, I wasn't aware she had anything that was really worth nerfing, and by any stretch of the imagination, I didn't think that they could possibly nerf much of anything on this girl to this, especially to this extent, but they found a way to do it. Outside of the normal, crouching normal changes that were whitewashed across the board, I mean, they gave her standing to 11 startup frames instead of the 13 that she had to suffer with. Well, it's an 11 frame standing to where everybody else has a 8 frame or a 9 frame standing to. So, not really much of a buff when you consider they just mailed that one in. Royal Protection, she doesn't have the ability to immediately block after absorbing a projectile, especially if a follow-up's coming. They only increase the damage on quick execution and on her throws, meaning that she does not have any more of the damage that she could have accrued by way of that being a damage buff on an overall scale after absorbing the projectile. So only the quick execution and the forward and back throws have been buffed. So I suppose that's their way of giving her extra damage on throws, considering that she still does not have a throw crushing blow. I mean, if they could have given her this change alongside also having the ability to block as soon as or extend how long she holds a projectile parry with royal protection, it would have been a buff. But unfortunately, she still gets hit out of her stuff very easily. Edenian Razors, of course, they had the change where now it has to be amplified in order to get all three of Razors out, all three fans out. Now it only has one circulating and it's -6 on block. And they also gave it 3 less recovery frames and it only attacks, uh, and it'll only just give -6 on block. There's no more +1 on block. I constantly said that I really didn't care about what they did with the Adenian razors, but by the same stretch, given the amount of hit stun it gives whenever she hits somebody, especially now that she has to amplify the razors to get all three and get that massive amount of hits done, it'd be very nice if they allowed her to link something afterwards so that she could get a combo when she spins a bar a meter to get that kind of hit stun going, and then she could actually get a whole other kind of combo going for herself. But that's just me forward thinking with how I thought that they could have made that a very unique maneuver instead of it just being something that keeps somebody guessing whenever you hit them with all three amplified razors. My opinion, it is what it is. But the also Adenian Twister, the crushing blow, which is already fandangled enough as it is, they made it no longer possible to achieve it if she's got 300 health while Fatal Blow is on cooldown. So essentially, this means that she can no longer, her comeback factor when she's got the Adenian Twister in her back pocket is now completely and utterly neutralized because reasons. Reasons. I mean, she's got, she doesn't exactly live by too many crushing blows in this game. She doesn't, like I mentioned before, she doesn't even have a throw crushing blow at her credit. And this was one of the ways where she could turn the tide whenever she's used Fatal Blow in order to try and achieve this. I mean, she's got an ulterior way of achieving the crushing blow such that if it hits an opponent that tries to, if it counters them while they're doing a down one, down three, or any kind of a low maneuver whatsoever, she will get the crushing blow. So it is possible to achieve it based on that particular merit, but by the same token, to take away that particular way of her getting her crushing blow when she's earned it, and things are going dire. I mean, to me, that seems like a very bad backwards maneuver to say the very least. But at this point, a lot of the decisions NRS has decided to make with the game, as we've discussed already, have been nothing short of backwards maneuvers. And in addition to that, upward fan toss, they completely obliterated this poor move. They completely annihilated the ability to not only allow fan toss to be a move that starts combos by, or well, it starts combos by way of having her amplify it off of certain hits, like back two, stand one. If you connected on those hits up close on your opponent and amplified an upward fan toss before, you could actually link that into a stand 1-2 lift for a full combo, and it would actually be a nice full combo for 1 meter. Now you can't do that. Now it hits them on the ground and just puts them in hit stun, and now you get a follow up instead of just going into a linking attack that allows you to get a combo. And what makes matters worse with that change is the fact that if you anti-air someone, normally you could have gotten a full combo. You could have gotten a full combo off of catching somebody out of the air, just like old times of what you could do with a fan toss, like saying MK11 or MK9, MKX, and you could actually get a full follow-up off of that with upward fan toss if you successfully defended the low ground. Not so much this time. I mean, it's possible, but now the effort to do it, especially considering the fact that her normals are about as slow and as limiting as ever, and we'll get into that in a bit. I mean, that is just like, why would you do that? Anti-airs in this game, which across the board, anti-airs did not get better. Across the board, you still struggle mightily against characters, especially the new DLC characters, who all have pre-patch jump-ins, mind you. They all have the ability to just jump in at will and really just make you play their game. As of course, you saw earlier this week when I streamed some sessions of Combat League. I believe there was one match in particular, I believe against Manny, where you would actually see me read the fact that he was going to use an interactable to try and make an approach from full screen's distance. I try to anti-air instead of air-to-air or any other kind of maneuver that could have beat him out of it. And in the process, not only is my anti-airing attempt beaten out cleanly, I eventually, of course, wind up losing the match because of the fact that that wound up leading to me being put in a situation that I essentially just could not recover from due to the fact that the momentum and resources, just about the flow of that entire game at that point, was changed. And so, unfortunately, that did not get better across the board. But then you've got this maneuver with up fan that could actually anti-air and make people scared to jump on her. Now they've made that worse. They've made it worse. They're essentially rewarding people for playing recklessly like that and jumping on a character that should have a maneuver that could blow them up for doing such. Now they've made it a lot more lenient such that they don't have to face as big of a punishment on that as before. Like, why would they do that? It makes no sense. It makes no sense, and it's now gotten to a point to where essentially the entire competitive community it looks at the way that they've treated not only the anti-airs that exist, but just not essentially giving anybody else across the game any which way to really just neutralize the threat of a jumping opponent or minimize the threat of that. And we're all just left collectively scratching our heads, asking ourselves why NRS does not take any of that to heart. Especially when you consider that it's a complete backslide from what we had in our arsenals in MK9. You jumped on somebody in MK9, you were dead meat. Let's be honest about something. I knew the arsenal of anti-airs Kitana had in that game, and as well as the rest of the cast had in MK9. You jumped on somebody in that game, you were fucked. On every single level imaginable, you were boned. Especially if they had the resources and the follow-ups necessary to get the full extent of it. Because Gravity and MK9, you actually had to know what combo follow-up you were going to do. It wasn't standardized like what MKX would eventually become and what MK11 essentially is. You actually had to know your follow-ups. And MKX, anti-airs got a little bit weaker, but by the same stretch, once people got their feet wet in the game and really found just what buttons worked best with them and their characters, then you started seeing folks become a lot more prepared for guys that love to leave their feet. Not to mention, trip guarding was a big thing in MKX, and it still is to this day. Of course, for those of you that play in the showcases, you would know. You exploit that very well. But of course, as far as my characters like Kitana and whatnot, Rule One existed for a reason. I mean, that was the very core of Rule One. You jumped on Kitana in any which way in MKX, you were done. Let's just be real here. You were done. And a lot can be the same said of the same way of a lot of different characters in MKX once everybody learned about what did the trick for their characters. But in MK11, a lot of that particular mantra of how to be defensive while you're on the ground with an airborne opponent seems to have gone to the wayside to the extent where not only are they not as widespread and prevalent as they used to be in past games, but it's the fact that jumping seems to be encouraged now to the degree that anti-airs and their limited viability aren't exactly something that folks need take into account anymore. It bites, but unfortunately, that's the game that we're playing. I mean, it's really crazy. As I like to welcome Eric into the chat. How you doing, buddy? I'd like to welcome everybody that's joined in so far tonight, as we're just talking about, of course, the changes that have been made across the balance of MK11 or MK11 Ultimate or UMK11, however which way you want to address it or designate it. That's what it is. Of course, the cancel from the half blood stance, continuing on with those changes to Kitana. I mean, they're no longer throw immune during some of their frames. I mean, half blood stance. Just basically everything that had to deal with highborn Kitana got completely and utterly eviscerated. And to make matters worse, now we have to live with the aesthetic of knowing that another character's influence, i.e., Melina's influence, is staying inside of Kitana's toolkit in spite of the fact that old Yuckmouth is now back in the game and is now back in her full and has the full extent of her influence now in her own base foundation. Now, why? All right, looks like we're back in there. All right, so just as why in the world they see fit to essentially, double up on Kitana's moveset with another character's influence like they did in MKX and like they did back in the day with MKDC. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, why is it such a problem to let Kitana be Kitana and let other characters have their own shit? I mean, I don't get it. I don't. Kitana is Kitana. She's not Chameleon. I mean, that's both iterations of Chameleon's gig, stealing moves from other characters and using them as a part of his or her move set, whichever Chameleon that we're gonna talk about. But nevertheless, it would be very nice if NRS would just understand that there is no reason to shove another character's influence into Kitana's aesthetic and her toolkit. There isn't. There was no point in doing so with any of Melina's maneuvers, both in this game and obviously in MK versus DC. But MK versus DC, that was way back when. That was an eternity ago. That was under the Midway banner, too, if I recall correctly. But by the same stretch, in this game, there is no reason for them to constantly shove another character's influence into Katana's moveset, especially considering that, as far as even by MK11's fandangled lore standards, there is no business there's no relation to why Katana would even want to do that in the first place. None. Why would she want to keep any kind of keepsake of Melina's and use it in battle when she's got her own gear? I don't get it. But nevertheless, that the focal point behind that little rant. Let Katana be Katana. Let the other characters have their own aesthetic. Okay. Um, and then of course my thoughts. Yeah, here's my thoughts on the new DLC. I mean, you've already heard my piece on Melina. Really not into her, and quite frankly, her community makes me want to puke. By the same stretch, on the other hand, seeing that character's been designed, I mean, she's got some stuff up close. But by the same stretch, that character's nothing like what I'm willing to bet a lot of the Melina community was really expecting. Now, granted, I don't know if you could really expect to get the version that you got at the end of MKX, which, to be fair, I mean, obviously, you know, what goes around comes around on that one. Uh, but by the same stretch, I wasn't exactly expecting her. I don't want to say she's lacking because, like I said, she's got some stuff. She's got mix. She gets up close on you and she can mix your stuff up. But at the same time, it's nothing like what I essentially saw coming with regards to her toolkit. I mean, the ball rolls still, the ball roll. The telekick, I mean, they've now deleted her ability to get any kind of a follow-ups on block on that, which is a little bit of a contrast from what happened in MKX and MK9, which to me is a good thing. I mean, no teleport should be that nutty. But by the same token, you look at the rest of her toolkit across the board, and it seems like she's got a lot of stuff that, to be honest with you, it's just gonna take folks a little bit of time to uh, actually come to grips with. Because there are certain other characters throughout the roster where I've always said, you just give people enough time and they'll figure out some stuff with those characters that they'll eventually wind up becoming forces of nature. Devore was one of those characters that I recall saying such about way back when, and sure enough, that potential's been brought out by multiple players, including but not limited to guys like Sonic Fox. And then, of course, you play guys like Zwei And then before he stopped playing and went on his break, guys like King Gambler, who even amidst him using Nightwolf, was still a force of nature with Devore whenever he did touch her. I mean, that just goes to show, you just give people some time. Collector, another character that it took people some time. Kung Lao, people thought Kung Lao was horrible at first, and I was like, you guys are high. This character is super good, and sure enough, Scar uses him, and sure enough, he was. Foxy Grandpa proving his stuff with Lao. And yeah, Lao has always been a dynamite character, and it's good to see people are, definitely uh, looking at the light on that one. Shang Tsung, another character took people some time to really see the beauty of, and so on and so forth. But by the same stretch, yeah, Melina's gonna take some time for people to bring out the full potential, and same can be said with Rain. In fact, all three of these characters, Rain, Rambo, Melina, you could say that it's gonna take these guys some time to really figure out the full extent of. I mean, you've already seen some good stuff over the course of the last couple of weeks with folks that are using Rambo. I mean, figuring out stuff on his low crawl, all the things that he's got out of that, and how he can just low profile anything. I saw this beautiful video on Twitter about how Rambo can even low profile the hell out of Melina to the point when he's in that low crawling stance where he can just basically knock her out of just essentially anything. Ball roll, slide, and her best mids, even her fatal blow. It did not matter. I mean, it was very funny and very poetic to see that happen. And I actually posted something about that on Twitter. In fact, I'll actually see if I can find that for you so that I can link that to you here in the chat. But the stuff that folks are finding so far in the game with those new characters, I mean, it's only a matter of time before more of that stuff becomes prevalent with all the DLC that's been released. I mean, they're not my taste, to be honest with you. I mean, to tell you the truth, I've had a chance to play with all of them, and to just be frank, I mean, none of them would really ignite any fire in me in order to really turn that into them into a squeeze that I'd grind. As linking you guys to that very post that was made on the low profiling situation with Rambo and Molina. So if you want a good laugh, take a look at that. But by the same token, you've got uh, three characters right there that Rain, I mean, it was a long time coming. I mean, I knew he was going to eventually come back, although for Rain fans, I bet they kind of feel somewhat slighted that the only appearances that Rain's made in new games has been as DLC. And then, of course, he was in the story, the full story of MKX, and not given any kind of love in that game, even though he had a model and everything. But by the same stretch, good for him that he's in. Rambo, nobody wanted Rambo. I'm gonna be frank with you, nobody wanted Rambo. If you ask anybody that's truly hardcore into Mortal Kombat who they would have wanted to take that third slot, I'm fairly certain a vast majority of us would have told you we would have preferred a Mortal Kombat character take that slot. I'm fairly certain a lot of us would have actually said, yo, give Nitara that slot, or give Ashura that slot, or even give Lee May that slot. I mean, or give Draman, Havoc. I mean, all the Havoc references in this game, and that character gets no love. He was even a prevalent force in the comics when MKX was rolling hot. And you had Havoc everywhere, man. I can't tell you how many folks really wanted Havoc to come back. And he still can't get any due. I mean, it's such a shame, too, because especially as far as lore is considered, the 3D characters actually have some of the most colorful lore in the MK universe as any of the classics. I mean, it would have been really nice to see that, but by the same token, I guess for some reason or another, it wasn't meant to be. But all told, the DLC have now come out, and that's pretty much how I see things with them. But at the same time, when you look at the game's direction as a whole, you look at right now the way that everybody's just taking to playing the game, because a lot of the core things in the game have not been fixed, because a lot of the core features just have not been added, or certain core things have just, as far as the balance with certain characters individually speaking, and then speaking from my own taste, as a Kitana player, the things that you had that weren't top tier or weren't overpowering but gets taken away. A lot of the morale is very wishy-washy right now with the game, to the extent where there seems to really not be too much middle ground. There seems to not be too much middle ground. Either you really enjoy the game or you really don't. I mean, a lot of guys have come from I mean, the thing about Mortal Kombat games that make them very special from a lot of different fighting game franchises is the fact that every game is tooled extremely differently. I mean, what folks might excel at in one game, they might not excel at in the next game. And vice versa. It's just one of those things where whatever game best suits your taste as far as Mortal Kombat goes, you have different ways of going about it, and you have different games that kind of suit your taste. I mean, me personally, I've always loved MK9, in spite of all of its quirky flaws. That I think that if it had been given that final patch, that final update that was teased for so long during its competitive lifetime, that could have improved upon so many qualities of life in that game. I still think that to this day, you'd still have MK9 tournaments. I mean, that game would probably be bordering on Smash levels of longevity. Same thing with MKX. Now, MKX did receive that last patch that, of course, eventually wound up saving it and its long-term viability. I mean, fun fact, I've mentioned it throughout the course of the week, but fun fact for those of you guys that didn't hear it, I would have stopped playing competitively altogether back in 2016 after placing third at Mid-South Championships. Had it not been on that very weekend, and I was rooming with Too Easy at the time of that tournament, had it not have been for that weekend when he and I were at that tournament, that we actually saw the big news drop that NRS was going to deliver that final patch to MKX. And that was, of course, what saved its life. And the buzz now, this gives us a comp because the MK11 Ultimate update came out, I think it was about a month later than what that final update with MKX dropped back in 2016. Yeah, it came out about a month later because MKX's final update dropped in October of that year, and of course, that's when SoCal Regionals was. That was the first tournament after that dropped. And then you had, of course, this update with MK11 Ultimate dropping here in November of this year. And as such, you see a lot of the differences in attitude after the drops of both of those particular updates. The reactions couldn't be more different. I mean, back in MKX's day, when that patch dropped, when everything dropped there, you had every single player basically just grinding nothing but that game. I mean, it became something of an enigma at that point to where every character had stuff in their arsenal that now allowed them to compete. And if you put in the time, you put in the effort, and you found what was good with that character, you could take that character or some version of that character to the top. And that was what kept everybody grinding and grinding and grinding on that game. Even throughout the times when Injustice 2 was dropping and Injustice 2 became the new thing on the block, people still grinded MKX because of the fact that that new update really did a lot to rejuvenate how that game was played. In fact, that even continued on later on in the stages, the dying stages of Injustice 2, where you had midway through Injustice 2's life, folks were slowly but surely migrating right back into MKX to go ahead and get that rush again. Because in spite of people having kinds of different kinds of opinions on how MKX functioned, whether they didn't like 50/50s, the pace of the 50/50s, which got toned down, and then of course the pace of the game. I mean, it was something that kept everybody coming back because it was such a fast paced experience, and every character had ways to keep themselves in the fight that how could you not keep coming back to that? I mean, yeah, the game was flawed. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend the game was perfect. It had some flaws that if balanced out to this day, if they actually did some QA on it to this day, it would actually be a much more refined product in the sense that even after years now, 4 years now of being on that same meta, I mean you could still find ways to completely refine what's been put out there at this point. All right, but you look at the reaction now from Mortal Kombat Ultimate's release, however, on the other hand, and you've still got folks playing other games. You've got folks that are now, you got folks that do grind the game, that do live and die by grinding the game, and really do prefer to go ahead and play this game, which more power to them. Nothing wrong with that. But then you've got, on the other hand, you still got folks uh, that still prefer, a lot of folks in the competitive community, especially top players, that prefer to play other games, prefer to grind other things, and really a lot of that same interest in terms of making Mortal Kombat the focal point, a lot of that, in a lot of respects, isn't there in terms of the collective. You still got guys that have really been growing big time based off of using MK11 as the foundation of their platform to continue to keep things moving. Guys that are friends of mine, like Slayer and what have you, that have just seen themselves go to massive heights thanks to what the game's got, and them just growing along with it for in whatever format they so please, which is awesome. Hell, even I'm still gonna continue to do the showcases as far as MK11's concerned because I would definitely want to see, let everybody else enjoy the game that actually want to go ahead and play it. But in terms of folks actually wanting to, of course, grind Combat League for gear, grind Towers for gear, just grind the game, a lot like how we grinded MK9 and MKX, a lot of that same drive isn't there. Much of it just isn't there because a lot of it's been taken over by a lot of these newer kids that are coming as a part of these newer generation players, who definitely prefer to be a lot more multiple than a lot of us older heads definitely were back in the day, where a lot of our focus would just be right there on honing in on our craft with Mortal Kombat. I mean, maybe it's just my perspective, just what I'm seeing in terms of guys just, flat out grinding it. But I mean, you've got guys who absolutely do grind the game, especially a lot of the guys that are coming up that are a newer generation top players, like a Verk. Grinds everything heavily, but definitely plays multiple games. I mean, you've got guys like Show Off, same deal. I mean, you even have some of the guys like Deoxys, King Gambler, who's basically taking a break from everything. I mean, there's a lot of new blood over here in Texas. It makes me very happy to see that. But ultimately, things have changed now. The way things are right now, things have changed to where a lot of guys, because of where they stand on either the game or on fighters just in general, they're not stopping themselves to just now playing and grinding one solitary game in the vast majority of their time. A lot of them are now just playing a lot more multiple genres, playing a lot other things to really get themselves away from the grind of playing MK11 for sustained periods of time. Which, hey, I'm not condemning. It's just an observation. Just from my perspective, that's one thing that I've definitely observed for whatever reason or another. Is I'd like to welcome Ghost Snips and Audio Raver. How's it going, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, just as far as all of that's concerned, that's really how I see a lot of the way that our community is trending, such that it seems like a lot of us, I mean, hell, even I practice a lot more games than fighters than I used to. And I'm actually glad for that because there were so many titles that I missed out on. There's so many titles that I've got to catch up on. It's not even funny. mainly because of the fact that over the years I've dedicated so many years of my time to just playing nothing but fighters, especially competitively. But COVID, now that COVID, the pandemic's made us sit in and really reevaluate how we go about look at the games that we've got. It made me definitely realize that there are a lot of other titles that I truly do need to dive into because I've just given up so much time to grinding on my craft, on my fighting game craft. I mean, credit to all these guys that are coming up that actually see that at a much younger age. But by the same stretch, if the games were anywhere near like MK9 or MKX levels worth of wanting to just grind it for hours and hours and sorry about that, and not get tired of it, I mean, it's a bit of a different deal now compared to what it was before. All right, and I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there's gonna be different tastes. I mean, me personally though, on the insight that the game is just not something that I want to grind, especially as repetitively as I grinded many titles before that. It simply has to do with the fact that for me personally, the game just repeats a lot of the same mistakes as a lot of its predecessors. Now, hear me out on that. Hear me out on that. You see, I just mentioned, of course, that MK9, MKX classics of games. All right, but of course they weren't perfect, and no game's ever perfect. But when you consider just what's come between MK9 and all the way up to this current game, MK11, you have to wonder why in the world a team of developers as vast as NRS is so hell bent on repeating the same mistakes and being so unapologetic for how very unnecessarily lackluster a lot of their product can be in spite of the influence it has. Let me expand upon that a little bit. This week, or these past couple of weeks, of course, I've also mentioned it earlier here in the streamcast that I wasn't a fan whatsoever on what they did with Kitana's design. Anybody that knows me will tell you, you've even seen it on my YouTube channel. I've got a video on it, Kitana's brutal shortcomings. Take a look at it if you haven't seen it. And then, of course, I've also brought it out on multiple streams. You can check out the archives if you're subscribed to the channel. And you can also check out the Twitter posts that I've made detailing and highlighting all of those major shortcomings, along with some of the other prevalent Katana players in the community or guys that have put in the time with Katana to definitely know what needs to be changed, what things are effed up, and can't even explain why things are effed up to the degree that they are. And this is something that we've known about basically since the release of the game, where items like back to, stand to, forward to are all detriments to her, even if they connect on my opponent whenever I have a read. Where, obviously no more fan toss combos unless I've got my opponent in a fortuitous situation in the corner. No more no real good ways of letting back three work for me. Many items in my toolbox, whether normals or specials, just completely and utterly underwhelming, underpowered, and detrimental in some way, shape, or form, even when she gets the hit. And when you bring it to the developer's attention, they'll basically tell you everything's working exactly as it should, in spite of how wrong the outlook of it all is when you bring it up to them by way of a match being used as context. This was also done earlier, just a couple of nights ago, with Aziz. Which shout outs to Aziz. If you're watching, by the way, or if you watch here, shout outs to you, sir. I said it on Twitter. You should absolutely be a QA analyst at NRS or in any other gaming facility. They would be very honored to have you because all the things you find in a game that should not be there, uh, that I'm pretty sure not even the developers were able to think about, hats off to you, sir. Speaking of which, guess what I wore for the first time in years today? The hat. Bucket hat boss boys today. Even for a slight chance to just walk out to my car when it was raining. Yeah, but just so many things wrong with their games right now that should be caught in QA that aren't caught because the things that NRS games suffer from that a lot of other big developer games do not suffer from, lack of testing, lack of extra eyes coming in for super extended periods of time, just lock testing these games, testing for bugs, testing for things that should not be there, that should absolutely not be there whatsoever. And the fact that they just do not have those hands or invite those hands, or those hands that come in actually wind up having ulterior motives as to making sure that something flies under the radar with a character that they adore for reasons. Wink, wink, wink. But that said, the fact that they just don't bring in guys or rotate their QA staff to the point to where you bring in fresh perspectives, unbiased but neutral perspectives on how the game should be tooled, balanced, and dealt with. Every single other developer has lock tests, whether it's of course the Japanese developers ArcSys, you have Namco Bandai, Capcom. You had these guys bring in multiple gamers, tournament level gamers, high level competitive gamers that come in and help them fine tune their products. I mean, no product's ever perfect upon release, but to have the kinds of bugs that have lingered on in MK games ever since not only just MK9, but we're talking about even MK9 was plagued with issues that came along from the 3D era. Because of course they use 3D hitboxes and they use 3D influences, a lot of which that have carried on even to this day with the collision detection regions. The fact that even they've got even some of those problems that have persisted on since the UMK 3 days or the old 2D days where you had things like from back in the day with player one advantage still being a thing in an MK9. The fact that they just don't, for an elongated period of time before release, the fact that they just do not send the game out, let people test the game like Namco Bandai did for 2 years. They took that game out to EVO and multiple tournaments and let the competitive community play it and fine tune it for the better part of years before they eventually finally released it in 2017 and released a very well done product that's still taking the world by storm to this day. The fact that NRS doesn't do something similar to this, and same thing that Capcom and ArcSys, they did the same thing. That's one of the major reasons why NRS games lose their luster and lose their sheen as much as they do. Because they do not commit to actual testing. Long-term, long-standing quality assessment, quality analysis of their products. And that's one of the reasons why, in spite of how much momentum they'll have when they announce a title, their titles age like cheap beer instead of fine wine. A very lucky exception to this just so happens to be MKX. Hell, MK9, you could probably even qualify that. But then again, you going deep into MK9, you'll go deep into the reasons why every one of us that played that game worth something will tell you that if they had just patched that game one more time and gave it the TLC that it deserved, just one more time, and gotten rid of so many of the bugs and the things that existed in that game, reduced the prevalence of armor, reduced the craziness of some of the things that would happen, that game would, like I said, it would be enjoying a Smash level existence right now. No question. No question. That game will essentially be like our Smash, our third strike, which essentially is what to a certain extent, I'm not gonna say to a complete extent, because we're talking about hallowed games right now, considering their backlog with Smash, and then obviously I just mentioned Third Strike and what have you. The MKX would be better suited to be one of those games that everybody can continue to play for years on end. And I mentioned, and of course, even that game, as much as I love it, as much as I love that game, it still has its faults. And that those faults go all the way back during its development days when there was no long-term testing on the product. And no, releasing a demo out for a couple of months and where it's on and off, wishy-washy on who gets the demo. It's politics on who even gets a demo. And you get the opportunity to actually put hands on the game, just see just what's there, see how they can fine tune the direction of the engine, the development of the gameplay, the fine tuning of just how things are supposed to be done, and taking out some of the wonky craziness that happens. NRS does not commit to that. Not to mention the design and the balanced directions of we all know who. Your first name starts with P, last name starts with G. We all know who it is. I mean, we always say praise be to them whenever shit goes right, and we all say F them when shit goes wrong. We all know who it is. I mean, when you look at the way the design of the balance, the design direction of a lot of these games has been, it ages horribly because the QA that's being done, especially with the guys that are there right now with 16-bit and Dizzy, it's just not enough. It is really not enough. I mean, the ways that a lot of these games could have been developed, it could have been so much better. It could have been so much better if they had allowed multiple high-level players, like yours truly, or like Aziz. Like I mentioned him earlier, but Aziz, I cannot begin to tell you just how awesome of a job that he's done in terms of labbing the game and finding things in the game that really should not be there, or if they should be there, how to maximize the full potential of it, because the dude labs. Bring a bunch of lab monsters in to actually help you fine-tune your product. But the thing is, what they have in place, another way that those guys just aren't sufficient enough to do that job in terms of, of course, 16-bit, Dizzy, and what have you, is that earlier this week, these past couple of weeks, I've been bringing out the faults ever since reading the patch notes of what they did to Kitana, and then, of course, using that in gameplay, making videos about it, whatever. I've showcased the extent of the damage done with the nerfs that they gave to her, along with, of course, highlighting the fact that nothing was done to her norms. I'm just using Kitana as an example because I put more time into this character than any other character combined. All right, just using this as an example, but this is a very good example of a lack of very solid design and development on an archetype of a character, an aesthetic, whatever that you want to designate it, it doesn't matter. This goes and molds my point exactly, okay? I bring these issues up to 16-bit, and 16-bit, instead of just seeing the full extent of what was going on. Of course, I tagged multiple devs. I tagged 16-bit. I tagged Dizzy. I tagged Paulo. I tagged Derek Kurtzit. I tagged Tyler Lansdowne. I tagged basically all the folks that are worth tagging in order to get something like this to not just fly under the radar. Because, of course, this is the third game this is the second game in a row where they've just given her such a very lackluster design, and it's taken laundry list after laundry list after novel of changes to get her to a point to where she was in somewhat of an adequate place to be. And I say somewhat of an adequate place to be because the character's base toolkits up until the final patch of MKX, if we're going back that far, was so flawed that it took one more laundry list of things that for them to retool that in the final patch in October of 2016 to change all that, allowing her to play the game to the degree where she can play the game to this day. But then you look in the MK11, where, as I mentioned, I detailed just, of course, the options that she's got off of the back punch button, the 2 button, the lackluster nature of the 1 button, the lackluster nature of her basically, all of her buttons are just shoddy. They're just shot. For whatever reason or another, they leave her in positions where she absorbs more harm than good, even in the times where she's made a good read on somebody. The game's universal mechanics like breakaway definitely don't do her any favors. But by the same token, you get down to the fact that for the second game in a row, not only have they screwed up on her design in that sense, but they've also screwed up in the sense where another character's influence has been shoved into her aesthetic. And in this case, as opposed to MKX with Mournful, in this case, they've put that character whose aesthetic was cloned for Kitana's sake, and they put her in the game as DLC. So what was the point of them shoving that likeness in Kitana's moveset? If they were, because I'm here to tell you right now, it takes time, effort, resources, whatever you want to call it, to create a character in a game, even as DLC. That character had to have been under development for some time in order for them to actually release them in the time that they did for Ultimate in order for that to happen. And it takes years to do this. If it took you that amount of time to create that character, from the release of the game up to this present moment, why would you shove her attributes into another character's moveset, regardless of whether it was Kitana or another character? Why would you shove those attributes into another character's moveset, further limiting what you could have done in terms of originality for that character? It makes no sense why you do that. And the only response you get out of NRS on such a thing is, seriously. Seriously. I mean, when you get right down to the thick of it, Kitana is a very good microcosm of just how fandangled much of the design direction in this game is. Like, uh, Jackie. Like, what kinds of speed, crack, cocaine, and all the above were they on when they designed that character for this game? Like, who thought?
You will
And then
learn
all of that was a good
respect.
idea. It's like the thing, Tagio, for the follow. Much respect, man. Thank you so much. Although please forgive me if I pronounce that incorrectly. Please forgive me. Tagilo or Tagio. That nevertheless, thank you so much, buddy. Um, when you get right down to, I continually bring up, of course, Katana's archetype, where, of course, a lot of the things that she's got are completely wrong, where a lot of her normals don't even connect to Fanado or to several other things in her arsenal. I mean, there's so many which ways I can detail all that, but like I said, I've already made videos on that. If you want to check them out on my YouTube channel, go right ahead. Which, speaking of, taking a moment to identify that, as well as the Twitter right there inside of the About Me page. Feel free to follow both of those. Of course, without all of you guys, I don't do any of this, so I appreciate any and all of your support. And then, of course, feel free to like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then, of course, I definitely adore it if you like, follow, subscribe here to Twitch, man. I definitely applaud any and every single one of you that have done so. And of course, if you want to keep track of everything that happens within the StarDock community, the StarDock Discord is also tagged down there inside of the Twitch page. If you go down there at the bottom of the About Me section, you'll go ahead and see the link to go into the Discord section. I'd like to see many more of you guys in there, as we've now approaching 60 members within the Discord community. Thank you to every single one of you that have made that possible. I could not make it work without you. thank you so much, and I definitely look forward to seeing many more of you there. And I hope you guys all enjoy the content that's come out of both here in Twitch and in YouTube. But going back to the point that I was making on the design direction, of course, of on Kitana's moveset and some other characters' moveset, you take a look at the design direction that they took on Shao Kahn. Man, you thought Kitana had it bad? Oh man, Shao Kahn's toolkit. I'll never forget going into the training mode just last summer, and I used Shao Kahn just for a few minutes. I was just in there for a few minutes with him because I really wanted to see what the big deal was with regards to his release and to see if they were going to actually do anything special for his return. And it only took me 10 minutes to realize just why a lot of the Shao Kahn community was downtrodden. It only took me a few minutes. 4-3-4. Those poor guys just. I mean, wow. That's just such a basic change that I would make for them. Or there's so many things on that character's toolkit that, to be honest with you, I just do not understand why NRS would just make it as lackluster as it is. I mean, that poor character. What was his 4-2? I think his 4-2 was like a 28 frame high or something like that. So, I don't think I'm getting that figure completely right, but either way, he had some absurd numbers with some of the things that he would be able to do or not to do. And essentially, the only thing that character was allowed to do was just shoulder charge until they surrendered. I mean, good lord. I mean, what in the world were they thinking when they thought that Shao Kahn's moveset was good? This was a moment where having testers or having somebody like of Aziz's quality get in there and actually showcase to them that this character's toolkit is just flat out unacceptable would have helped on so many levels. It really would have. It really would have. And just in general, that's what you've got with the NRS QA team. You've got guys that'll either just turn it around back on you, saying that you're doing something wrong in spite of you demonstrating the lackluster qualities of that toolkit and showcasing that it's wrong. I mean, I can link you to many different tweets where I tweeted at 16-bit on just how lackluster Kitana's moveset was, and I would just be getting complete and utter nonsense responses in the sense that I would be saying the bit, are you serious in saying that this guy was wrong to get punished, even though he had the read on this airborne opponent, knocked him out of the air, but somehow he drops down before any follow-up hits him, and now Kitana's in recovery frames, whereas this guy's getting him off the ground, and the guy that got knocked out of the air is granted a free combo. You're essentially saying that it's okay for people to just jump all day on every touch with Kitana, and even back 1-4 is not foolproof. That's one of the most mediocre mid-strings that she's got, because even that's not foolproof to the extent to where it connects on people even if they leave their feet. And 16-bit basically just said, yeah, that's how she was designed to be. She was designed to just flat out get annihilated by people that get clipped out of the air and wake up and she's in recovery frame somehow, and to just flat out get her shit pushed in by a reckless opponent. That's the QA that's leading us right now. That is the QA that has essentially, created MK11, where we've still got wonky hitboxes, no anti-air hitboxes worth talking about, interest in the game from a casual level to a competitive level, in spite of the events that are being brought up by a lot of the great content creators of our community, are dying right now. I mean, you look at a lot of those events, you'll see a lot of entrants, but by the same token, you're going to see more DQs than you're going to see people competing. people sign up for it thinking that they're going to get up and get ready to go for it. But at the end of the day, you look at any one of those given tournaments, you're going to see a good 60 to 40 DQ ratio. Guys have to put themselves in a certain mood to not only just play this game for the sake of their followings, their fan bases, and for their supporters, much less getting to a mood to play the game competitively. This game rewards play that really should not be rewarded. I mean, granted, they tried to simplify it as best as they could, but in simplifying it, I mean, it's just simple don't always mean better. And that's coming from somebody who's lived and died by the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. I mean, I'm a guy who's always preferred simplicity. But that said, too much simplicity, especially in a game like this, I mean, at which point do you realize that lowering the standards too much is just going to have the opposite effect of what you think it might garner? You might think it's bringing in more casuals, and more of them are going to outweigh the kind of impact you get, especially financially speaking, because guess what? It's a business. They love the competitive community, but it's a business, and business-wise, you cater more towards the casual community. But to that extent, even a lot of them are pretty much finding other which ways to go about their time playing fighters right now than just delving all of their time in MK11. And when you get into how stale the game gets, how quickly and how stale the game gets, there's a reason for that. You can't blame them. You can't blame them. Even with the custom variations right now, I mean, the custom variations are giving people something to lab to a certain extent, but unfortunately, because a lot of the foundation of the game has not changed, because a lot of the foundation of the game is just being flat out ignored by the guys that created it in QA and with design and development by Lord Paulo himself, it's not gonna change. It's just not. My outlook on the competitive community of MK11 is this: it's gonna even if by some miracle events wind up resuming at 2021, if the pandemic somehow some way lessens its influence on the world, which let's hope that does happen, because I'm fairly certain a lot of everybody that's been cooped up in their houses on lockdown, quarantine, I'm fairly certain everybody wants to have some semblance of life return to normal. Although I definitely hope the world becomes a lot more sanitized as a result of this. But that said, even if offline events were to resume in full force for MK11, a lot of any kind. I don't think there's going to be any kind of a big momentum shift on when things resume for MK and the NRS community, because I just don't think that it's going to have a lot of the staying power necessary to just garner big numbers. I just don't think it will. I mean, it's going to possibly take a very good blockbuster. I mean, it would require a blockbuster of a return in the offline competitive community for all of that to wind up being the case. It would just require such a Herculean and outstanding show from the beginning of the tournament to the end of it. And who knows, that could possibly showcase more of the flaws in QA that were missed or that weren't tested on, that could actually demonstrate to them how to fix their game, and possibly that's what gets NRS to get off their tails and truly fix the game. If something like that were to happen on the first tournament and they wouldn't waste that kind of data the same way they've wasted all these months of data of people being in lockdown and showcasing to them the things that they needed to fix but didn't, if that would have happened, who knows? Who knows? But a lot of MK's future would definitely hinge, if offline communities tournaments resume, on how well things would actually want to be numbers wise and popularity wise. because right now MK11 just does not have a lot of strong legs to stand on. And from my perspective, it just does not have a lot of momentum going for it. And if you take a look at what the perspectives of other like-minded players across the community on social media, Scar even made a post on this a few weeks back, or not a few weeks back. I'm sorry, just a couple of nights back. I'm so sorry about that. Um, on Twitter, asking how everybody's mood on the game is, and you're gonna see the very crowning definition of my point exactly. If you haven't already, take a look at where that post is. In fact, I'll even link it to you all in Discord, and I'll let you take a look at it and discuss it there, of course, and as a part of the community page, and you'll be able to see the full demonstration of how things come together on that level. Okay, and so with that, yeah, Killing Frenzy, I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't agree more, buddy. And jumping is yet another one of those elements where a lot of players are just so sick and tired of the game as a whole. All right, but now we're gonna go ahead and shift into a little bit of Q&A from all of you guys. All right, so this the one of the this is the second to last topic here on the cast, and this is where I simply ask all of you in the chat on just if you have any questions or anything in general for me. All right, so we're gonna take a little bit of time. We're going to take a few minutes to go ahead and have a little bit of Q&A. Whether you want to ask me about me, if you want to ask me about my career, if you want to ask me about and just ask me anything. All right. If you guys want to ask me anything here on the cast, you now have a few minutes to go ahead and do so. So for those of you that are here in attendance, first of all, thank you so much. I definitely welcome any and all of you in here for the inaugural StarDock StreamCast. And as far as everything is concerned, I definitely uh, I definitely give you the floor. The floor is yours. If you want to ask me anything, go right ahead. My duelist gang. Uh, nah. As far as I like duelist, I love duelist Liu Kang here in MKX. I've enjoyed that seeing that variation in MKX, and I enjoy it now. Which is all the more reason why I'm really looking forward to seeing more of Speedo Sound and seeing more of seeing just about basically a lot of other duelist guys coming out. Of course, seeing Forever Elite whenever he comes out onto the showcases for MKX, it always feels good seeing the OG duelist gang come on out and do work. If that's what you're asking about. But yeah, man, I love duelist Liu Kang. I always enjoyed watching that variation. I always enjoy watching that. So, yeah, what other questions y'all got? You want to ask who I got in tonight's battle between Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr.? To be honest with you, I really couldn't tell you. Although I really, a lot of my heart really wants to see Mike Tyson do something. Cause I remember watching him fight uh, back in that 2000, his last fight in 2005, where he looked like a shell of himself back then, even though he was in shape. But I don't know. We're gonna have to see what happens there. Do I think MK11 is getting more characters? Well, they say they're not done with the game. They say they're not done with the game, and whatever characters they do put into this hot mess, I definitely pray that they have better QA, better testing, basically better everything as far as their development, because uh, a lot of the game hinges upon them making good decisions with the next bits of content they do release in MK11. And as a result, I really do think that, you know, as far as new characters are concerned, it would do them a lot better if that's the route that they're going with. If that's the route that they're going with, adding more characters into the game, they need to listen to the community and add more MK characters. This isn't even negotiable. Add more Mortal Kombat based characters. We mentioned it earlier in the streamcast, mentioning characters like from the 3D era, like Nitara, of course, like Ashura, Lee May, and then of course you have Draman, Havoc. Bring guys like that back, or bring Tremor back. Now, Tremor, they knocked that one out of the park in MKX in terms of a new character that was reborn. And then, of course, you've got, hinted characters like Chrome. Like, I'd like to see something like that. A character like Chrome or something like that that's made out of like liquid metal and could actually do some stuff like that. I mean, I'm just speculating. Just fan theorizing what I'd figure they'd make out of that. But that said, I'd love to see more new characters. I'd love to see them add more to any Mortal Kombat, but at the same time, there needs to be Mortal Kombat characters. No more guests, no more BS. Add more MK characters. That's not even up for debate. That was Thanksgiving and that plate looking. Thanksgiving was good, man. Um, didn't have much of anybody to share it with, but basically due to the fact that I'm on that diet now that I'm really getting myself back into some good shape again, um, the diet really just consisted of some chicken, some sushi, and believe it or not, there's actually some plant-based chicken nuggets. Or it's not chicken. They're not made out of chicken. They're made out of plants. And I think I've made mention about this on a few streams in the past. You had some of which that are made up from I think what was it, Rising Farms or something like that. And then there's also the brand Morningstar Farms where I've also just been enjoying it. And so it's an easy way, a good easy way to, of course, get that vegetable intake in me, along with some of the other veggies I eat, like green beans, carrots, and all that other good stuff. But you had a good helping of that, and a good helping of fruit juice. I mean, it was good. I mean, I did okay. I did okay with what I had, man. And I definitely hope that every single one of you had good spreads, good plates, and definitely hope none of you had well done steak. Yeah, Killing Frenzy, man. I had the same reaction weeks ago when I saw it in the store. But you want to know something? I was like, dude, you want to know something? I've been meaning to get myself out of a rut because here's the thing. I've been in a rut in terms of a lot of the things that I'd eat. And I was just like, dude, I'm due to try something different, try a different experience altogether. And, I was just actually, believe it or not, in the vegan side of the store, which I rarely ever visit. But by the same token, I've been cleaning up my diet a little bit, trying to eat a little bit healthier. I've been, going ahead and adding some extra things, new things inside of my diet, just because I want to see if any of it sticks. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, I'll just look elsewhere. It's no big deal. And believe it or not, that's one of those areas where I took a chance, and sure enough, it's turned into something that I actually kind of like. I mean, it's not going to replace real chicken. It won't. But hey, it's good stuff. It definitely blew my expectations out of the water. Let me see here. Which game did I personally enjoy Kitana the most? Oh boy, visuals wise. When you say visuals wise, are you talking about in terms of aesthetic, gameplay aesthetic, uh, yeah, just I wonder what the context of that one is. Well, in terms of visual aesthetic, I mean, in terms of her body and whatnot, I definitely like the 3D versions. I don't like the 3D version, of course. MK2 Katana is always gonna have a special place in my heart. That's the original, and it's always gonna be a very important spot in my heart because, of course, the MK2 looks just so iconic. It's just so iconic. And then MK9 Katana, I'm always gonna love. Just how she made that entire look work. MKX Katana. I like all versions of Katana. I mean, as much of a bastardization as MK11 Katana is in terms of gameplay, from an aesthetic point of view, putting that face on any other iteration of Katana, I definitely do that. I definitely, especially MKX's version. I mean, MKX. I mean, everything was good except for the shovel chin that they gave her, and that's another thing that's I've never truly forgiven NRS for the shovel chin. I mean, seriously, come on, man. I mean, come on, man. But by the same stretch of the imagination, that's basically how I saw things as far as I see things as far as MK or Kitana's iterations. I mean, her iterations, all of them iconic for whatever reason or another. Sans MK11 for obvious reasons, but by the same stretch, her get as far as her looks, it spans across all games. But as far as her gameplay goes, gotta go with MKX. In terms of the last iteration of MKX, that the current iteration of MKX, gotta go with that one. Gotta go with that one. I mean, MK9 was special, but MK9 just had so many flaws about it that when you compared that version to the rest of the top tiers in that game, she had a glass ceiling. I mean, she had a very big glass ceiling, man. But MKX, she doesn't have that glass ceiling. She's able to compete with any and every. And as a result, I mean, it's hard for me to give that one up. Let me see here. Who would win between Goku and Superman? My God, you trying to get me flamed up just the same way that the Death Battle boys still to this day get roasted for that one. To be honest with you, I really can't even say. I mean, if we're talking about like the most powerful iterations of both characters, if we're talking about the most powerful iterations of both characters, unfortunately, I'm gonna. As much as I don't like the character of Superman, I still gotta say Superman. I still gotta say Superman, even though he doesn't have quite the fighting pedigree that Goku has. Just the fact that even at max power, if you're talking about the most powerful versions of both characters, you're talking about the most powerful versions of both characters. In spite of how much I love Goku, I just don't see him winning that battle. I'm sorry, man. He just has in spite of how much Toriyama loves to push the guy's limits to stupid heights. I'm sorry. It's just like DC is just too stupid. You bring the DC fanboys up in here, man. Yeah, the DBZ fanboys up in here. I'd bring the DC fanboys up in here, and we could let them all have a war. Let them all subscribe before they can go to war up in here. How about that? If they all subscribe in here before I let them go to war, how about that? Dude, I love these. I love DBZ or Dragon Ball a lot more than I could really even love the DC universe. That's the crazy thing about it. But everybody knows just how stupid OP and stupid the DC universe really is, man. But any other questions from anybody? Next time I see a question like that, I'm probably just gonna plead the fifth. I'm probably just gonna say, nah, I'm just gonna go in a whole different direction. All right, but for right now, man, it is 6:44 here in good old Houston, Texas. And really quickly, I'd just like to give some developments here to everybody, just to let you know. Of course, no StarDock showcase this week for MKX or MK11. It, of course, resumes next week. Action of that resumes next week uh, as we go into some good matches that we're going to have set up. So far, everything's in its infancy, and of course, for those of you that are interested in competing, that have visited along here on the forum before, you know the drill. Just let me know on social media after all of this is said and done. Let me know if you want to compete. Let me know which game you want to compete for, what day you're going to compete on, and I will get you a match on those days. So I definitely look forward to seeing many of you usual suspects invited to compete along with that. Of course, as I mentioned before this last week, we're working on putting some StarDock tournaments together, so that all of you that have supported up to this point, every single one of you that have had faith in more stuff coming along for MKX and possibly MK11 on the horizon, definitely looking to reward all of that by way of letting you being able to compete in said tournaments. And I can't wait to see what we'll get those started. They'll possibly be getting started here at the beginning of the new year, because at that particular point, I'll be focused on getting started inside of whatever new apartment I'll be at that point in time. Because as you know, I'm trying to move away from my current location, and so in order to be, of course, close to work, and of course to just start fresh. But by the same stretch of the imagination, I'm definitely looking to, I'm definitely looking to get all of that off the ground here very soon. And then, of course, upcoming during the week, the streamcast will be, of course, on the same time, same place on Thursdays. Of course, this was an aberration week where I had it going here on Saturday, but on Thursday is when it'll be taking place yet again, uh, in its full glory. So if you join me on Thursday nights at 8:30 Central Standard Time is where I believe I'll go ahead and set that down. It'll go and be either 8:30 or 9 o'clock. I will let you know closer to time of broadcast which time period it is going to get kicked off. But episode 2 will be this upcoming Thursday, barring anything that happens in between now and then. I hope to see you guys all on that one. And then and then of course I look to see all of you in the showcases, both in the Friday night MK11 showcase and the MKX showcase. Let me see this. Let's see the set you versus me versus Sonic and MKX. Let me see here. Yeah. Well, here's what I'll do. I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and show that to you guys in one of my upcoming showcases. I'll go definitely going to let you guys take a look at that as we of course get Slinky his wish fulfilled. No, thank you so much for joining in, Slinky here. Uh, at the tail end of the podcast. So for every single one of you that have come in here and enjoyed everything uh, with the streamcast, first of all, thank you so much for joining in. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode number 1. This is your boy Star Charger saying thank you so much for joining, and I cannot wait to see how all of you continue to support the next upcoming episodes. Awesome stuff. Thank you to every single one of you. I cannot wait for episode number 2. This was a lot of fun and very good stuff to every single one of you. I am going to go ahead and send you guys on. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy the fights tonight. If you plan on watching the Tyson versus Jones Jr. fight, if you plan on watching that, awesome stuff. There's some UFC going on tonight. I'm gonna enjoy that, and I hope all of you enjoy a wonderful night. Thank you so much.